couple of people, they heard the talk about becoming a Qur'an, and so they're asking about this idea, and it fits a lot of our conversation today. So if you consider, earlier we were talking about the imaginal realm, and or even just the ordinary realm, and we have to ask, other than the Quran that we're reading, is there some other way that God is referring to this idea of His signs? And as we know, in Sufism, this is a very important idea. Sanurihim ayatina fi afaqi wa fi anfusihim hatta yatabayyana lahum annahu al-haq. وفي الأرض آيات للموقنين وفي أنفسكم أفلا تبصرون. So we know that there's Quran has different meanings, and there's the mother of the books. So we know there's a sacred origin of the book. We know there's a Quran that we're reading, which is it's called comprehensive, and we know that the Sufis have said that the world is Qur'an and the human being is Qur'an. So I thought, well, rather than just give my opinion, I would answer the question from two sources. One would be from Lahiji, and we'll start with the world as Qur'an. To give the context, and you may recall that this section, and it's actually pretty early on in his tafsir of Gulshan-e-Raz, verse 200 approximately. And in this, he says, Banazde on ke janish dar tajalas hama alam kitab haq ta'alas. So for the soul that experiences God's revelation, all of the world is like Truth's book, the book of the Haq, True Reality's book, God Most High's book. Banazde Antke, Janish, Dar Tajaliyas, Dar Tajalas, Hama Olam, Kitab Haq, Ta'alas. Kitab Haq Ta'alas. So now in the commentary for this verse, because the claim that Ibn Arabi was making is that the awliya, they have a direct understanding of these ayahs, these that are the divine names, and if they have a very high level of comprehensiveness, the most comprehensive is like the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who is considered having a total comprehensive manifestation of the divine names. And so that's why there's this idea of the jami'at, meaning the comprehensiveness. And al-jami is normally translated the divine name. You've heard of this name as the gatherer. What would we say? Rahab-Jan, what would you say for Jama? The gatherer, or the one who comprehends everything. Ibn Arabi, as I've explained to you, he's everywhere using abjad. So deliberately in these passages, he's going to use abjad, and in this case, is no exception. So when you read this passage, you should be aware I'm afraid this thing is slowly giving up, but I think it'll make it. Okay, so we have three, so Jomea, 3, 1, 40, and 70. What is the total? 114. Does that sound familiar to you? It's the number of surahs of Qur'an. So he's decided as usual that he's going to. So when you read Fus al-Hikam, just remember how he is always, like, same with Rumi, Nizami, the others, they are using abjad, and they are communicating on the side about this comprehensiveness, and from his point of view, the whole nature of understanding God is to understand what can be understood, because we cannot understand God's essence, so we can understand the divine names. And so the more comprehensive is the understanding, the more we are like Qur'an. And earlier Faisal John is asking me about the divine names, what their relationship is to each other, and actually he's going to answer this question, because he's saying that the person, for the soul that experiences God's revelation, the whole world, Hama'olam, Kitabe Haq Ta'alas, the whole world is the book. It's not like the book, it's really the book. The whole world is God Most High's book. So then he says now, this is Lahiji, یعنی پیش آن کس که جان و دلش مجلای تجلی الهی شده و حق به دیده باطن او ظاهر گشته و مشاهده جمال حق در هر شی می نماید و از اوراق ذرات موجودات احکام اسرار تجلیات حق می خواند، مجموع عالم از غیب و شهادت کتاب حق تعالی است که مشتمل بر جمعی احکام اسما و صفات الهی است و هر فردی از افراد موجودات کلمه‌ای اند از کلمات اعلی که دلالت بر معنای خاص از اسمای جزوی حق دارند و با واسطه نفس رحمانی از باطن متنفس منبث گشته از غیب به شهود آمدند، همچو کلماتی که از باطن انسان به سبب نفس ظاهر می شنوند. So he says, for the person whose heart and soul are receptive to the theophany, to the divine revelation, and for the one whose inner vision apprehends the truly real and perceives the beauty of the real in every single thing, and who from the pages of the particles of created beings reads the particulars of the theophany's mysteries, for that person the whole world, whether manifest or hidden, is God's most high book, the Qur'an. This book is comprehensive of the properties of the divine names and qualities, and every one of the individual created beings is a divine word from God's speech, which is the evidence of a special meaning from among the particular divine names, which through the breath of the merciful is breathed into appearance from the hidden world in the same manner that words come from people, from what is unseen to what is seen. So this, of course, we will polish this up and we'll put it on our website, but this is, again, it's a little bit complex, but not really when we realize that what God is asking from us, will you not see? Will you not see that, as he says, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَةٌ لِلْمُقِنِينَ وَفِي أَنفُسَكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. Will you not see that there are signs in this world for the people who have certainty? Certainty means they have a heart that is truly perceptive, capable of realizing these things. And it's not only in the world, but within them, these people, within you see. Within you, yourselves. Will you not see them? Clearly, one is invited to realize that when there's something to be seen, God is asking, can you not perceive this? And you should try to perceive this. Earlier I was saying that we should try to get away from the thinking process. And what we should do, if we can, is to become empty, more empty, because then the divine names, see, there's things about ourselves that we don't know. Very powerful things about ourselves that we don't know about. And if we interfere, we probably won't find out about it, because we're so sure that we already know ourselves. And the hardest thing is to have the surprise that there was much more going on than we thought. So because of the body, because of nafs, because of instinct, we have adapted so strongly to that. Our sense of personhood is so much about what we heard in the last even few hours. We live in an astonishing culture that repeats trivia from every corner, from moment to moment. It's very hard to get free. And one of the first things we could do is follow God's first advice, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَةٌ لِلْمُقِنِينَ. So in the earth. So you'd say, oh, let me take a walk in nature. So now we get back to the thing that at some point a few years ago we were talking about the authentic and the haq. And I decided to translate it as the authentic. So when you go into nature, there's no more noise from the small, limited mind. Because in the Qur'an it correctly says that the human being is either the highest creature or falls below the animals. Because the animals, they have instinct, they have wisdom. And the human being with mind, which is easily distracted through the needs of the self and through objectification, it loses natural wisdom. The natural wisdom we call the fitrat. So the mind loses the natural wisdom. So why would we rely upon that mind? I should always ask myself, can I just stop doing what I'm usually doing? Can I stop trying to control my understanding of things, the way that I'm used to understanding things? Can I step aside and just try to become empty and say to God, I would like to understand this. And so when you go into nature, that may happen automatically. And in fact, the idea behind the Sufi doctrine of love and beauty is that sometimes the mind will be undermined, the selfishness will be undermined just because of beauty. So just by walking into nature and seeing the beauty of natural things, part of the beauty is you may see some ants eating a dead snake or something. and you say, wow, this is the divine name, son, that we were talking about earlier. There's death, and the first time a child sees a dead animal, children usually don't see a dead person first. Huh? They often see a dead animal first, and they ask about death. And I don't know if you remember the first time you saw a dead animal at all, and what crossed your mind. But I can remember the few times when I was asking my mother about this. Regarding the divine names, on the inside, this is very powerful. It's important not to intellectualize the divine names. And that's why if we become empty, we will know our divine names. See? So Maulana, as I quoted recently to you, he says, "Khish ra safi kon az awsaf khud ta bibini za pak saf khud." So it's a very strange idea that you would be purifying yourself from yourself to really get to know yourself. And that assumes that there's a deeper self and a more superficial self. This is throughout Sufism. We see this paradox. I would like to know myself, and I know I can figure it out. And this is not true. I cannot figure it out. The wrong part of the mind is asking the question. So it might take me 50 years to realize that I cannot ask the question this way. So the sooner we understand this, the better off we are, that we would relax and we would try to become nadan, to become ignorant. And if it was a prophet, then the better if this prophet is illiterate. Better that the prophet is a clean slate, see? Doesn't even read. So this is the wisdom of not knowing. Because the wisdom of not knowing is that the inside is receptive to the impact of the divine names. And then we are introduced to the divine names only through the apparatus of the self. Strangely enough, see, so for example, the divine names, they are the sky, they're in the sky, in the rain, and they also are inherent in the essences. The essences are the seeds. So when the rain falls, the seeds sprout. And so we want to let this happen naturally. We want to see what happens if if I let the rain in and I don't interfere with it. The mind doesn't interfere with it. So the mind is be like a real estate developer, let's say. So we don't want it to interfere with the farming. We say, come on, go home, because we want to see what happens if the rain falls, and we want to see what happens with what was planted here. And a real estate developer, we don't need a real estate developer right now for this land, you see, so go away, leave us alone, see. So then the seeds come up, and the teacher first sees the leaf come up, and the teacher says, oh, that's very interesting. I didn't realize it was a strawberry until now. And the teacher says, one day you will be red and juicy, and people will be wanting to make jam out of you see. Whereas this, I don't believe you. You say, well, it's okay. I shouldn't have told you that. Maybe you'll just better wait and you'll see for yourself. But they know from the leaf, they know from the flower what the fruit is from this. You see, because the Sufi has traveled the path. And even there's a dominant name, but as I told you, it's possible, my own experience is that you can still, God will give you the experience of particular divine names, even though this is not your strongest name. So when you see it, you remember it forever because you get it so rarely. And then but it's like you're aware of it, you understand it, but your strong suit will be the divine name that's very active in you, or those set of divine names that are very active in you. And so what he's trying to say here is that for the person whose soul has become aware, has become illuminated, the whole world is Qur'an, basically. Because at every moment the Qur'an is unlimited. It doesn't have a beginning or end because it is comprehensive. And God's name, Al-Jama'ah, is the comprehensive one, the one that gathers everything into one place. It's multiplicity and unity. And so this is why Ibn Arabi moves to this. Now, before I go to his commentary about the human being as the Qur'an, do we understand that Lahiji's position, and we've heard this a lot, how the world is the totality for the divine names, but are there any questions or comments about what I just read to you, or any part of it, about the world being Qur'an, or the world being a manifestation of the divine names? Yes.
So, as a teacher,
Yes.
if you look at us from our leaf, I guess you can say which one is your strength and character.
And this brings us to a very interesting topic, which has come up a lot in this circle, which is we call it the psychology of Sufism, which is an expansion on the Quranic psychology. And in that psychology, they are agreeing that there are three categories of self, but they regard the three categories as manifesting some particular property. And what we see in say, have you heard of Fusus al-Hikam, the Bezels of Wisdom by Sheikh Ibn Arabi? So this is a very famous book that he goes through each prophet of all the prophets, and he shows they each have a specialization. I don't know if any of you noticed, but when he says Fusus al-Hikam and al-Hikam, if you do the abjad, it comes to 99. So again, right from the beginning, he's giving you a clue that this is the ring stone. It's the seal. See, God has a seal, and this seal, sometimes it's called tabi'at because it has a tab. What is tabi'at?
Nature.
Yeah, nature. So you say, oh, the seal. I can walk out into the seal, and I see the frogs. I see the trees. And evidently the design on the ring is extremely complicated. Extremely complicated, but it makes its impression in the soil of Nasut. So Nasut is a domain, and it's very much like soil. Like it takes from above, it takes everything. So we realized that we could connect in different ways. We could say even in nature, a frog is not the same thing as a dog. So we realize there's different properties. What's different about them? One animal is surviving by hiding. Another animal is surviving by being large and ferocious and very visible, so the other animals don't steal his or her territory. You see, so we realize in nature there's differences. So now we come to the human being. And the Sufi psychology is that they call it the psychology of khasiyat, particularity, particular quality. So the best way of thinking of it in the most positive way, each individual has what's called Rabb khas. As you know because you understand Persian Arabic, means they have a particular lord. So we could say the frog has a particular lord and the lion has a particular lord. When I went to Kafiristan, they had a lord of the bees. If you go to Chetral in this area and you go there to Bumburet, they have many gods, and they have very interesting gods. The god of the bees, the god of this, and they have it's very beautiful. Of course, it's we would say maybe like idolatry or whatever, but it's very beautiful just to understand the kind of nature religions. But in the case of khasiyat, Rabbi Chos would be known. We're now looking at best case scenario, okay? And Ya ayatuha nafs al-mutma'inna urji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyatan. Do you know this verse? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. You know this verse, Qur'an. So, O soul, that is at peace and secure. This obviously is a high level of the soul, agreed. So this level of the soul that could understand the situation, God says, you could understand the situation, because return now, you see, to your Lord. Pleased and pleasing. Pleased and pleasing God. You see? Fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. Enter in among the servants, each one who has a particular Lord, Rabbi Chos. Enter among those people. Wadkhuli jannati. Enter into my paradise. And Sufis say Jannat in the sense of a covering, because I am the essence, which is in this case the ground of light, or the ground of the streams running under paradise, and you are the plants, you are the garden that is covering this with my beautiful names, which are manifested. You are manifesting my beautiful names without a stain, with no stain. So, can we know this? And the answer is absolutely, the doctrine of Sufism, we can know this. So this is our objective, let's say. Let's start from this side. Our objective is that in this life, we know this from personal experience. How do we know this? We pull away from nafs amore, because nafs amore, it is aware of the danger of the real king. So it's hiding the real king, the real owner of the house, and it has put on the clothing of the owner of the house, and it is become an egotist, you see. It is self-centered. And the reason it's so self-centered is because in the base it is terribly frightened that it will vanish, because it will vanish. So it's so terrified, it's trying to control everything and to run everything. And because it is suffering now, it's causing suffering to other people. So it is a tyrant, and it seems very powerful, but really it's very weak, because it is insecure. So now, does it have a relationship to Khasiyat? The answer is yes, because it can only have a relationship to the king that it is afraid of. So if it was the Lord of the Frogs, it could only be afraid of, if it was a frog, it would only be afraid of this, you see. So that's why people's negativity has a relationship to their relationship with the divine name. How does it begin the path? Because of nafs al-lawama. So the self that it in a healthy way is very hard for modern people, because you say, well, you have to get into self-criticism. What? I went to psychotherapy for years. They talked me out of self-criticism. So, but there's a difference between self-loathing and healthy self-observation and self-criticism. And so the malomati, they are these people who very much they're aware that even their, let's say one has a wonderful vision of God, they are aware this is dangerous, because one may become inflated. The ego may become inflated because of this. So to answer your question, you see the person who has who knows the servants, yes, of course they can see. They can see they looking for the heaven and the hell of that person. So the teacher is watching the hell and observing the hell, and then when the dervish is freed from the hell and they're in the paradise, the teacher is observing that. And that's what I mean by they are seeing the leaf. They're observing what the fruit, what the flower is going to be from that. You see, so they have some, but they should not say anything.
But isn't it good to know? So that
Yes, but the problem is it's not good for the intellect to know. See, the problem is the very ego. It'd be like if you were going to tell Pharaoh, Moses tried. See, so you're now, Pharaoh is asking, and Pharaoh asks, says, who is your God? Moses, Rabbana, our God. You see?
So how do you figure it out for yourself?
You try to arrange circumstances for a person to discover it. And you do give clues, you give help, but the main thing to understand is God is the guide. Even if you're on a desert island, if you followed God's advice, you would become empty. You would not try to do, the main thing is not to try to do what one usually does. So what we each usually do is generally, it's counterproductive to spirituality. It may be productive to success in this world, but it's not productive to spirituality. So Qur'an tells us to not do that, to try to turn away from nafs amore, and to try to love something bigger than oneself, to try to get away from oneself, because that would be a great opportunity to find out about oneself. And because it's like astonishing. It's astonishing because the Sufis, in other words, they have the most optimistic psychology that I know of. Because they're saying, if you got out of the way, you are the whole universe. Well, I don't know of any Western psychology that says that exactly to you. You are the whole, you are all of the universe, you are everything. And Ibn Arabi says, you for whoever becomes a Qur'an, you see. So, which we'll come to in a minute, but what is the experience like is the word ecstasy in English, you understand where this word comes from, to stand outside of oneself. But if you were to say to somebody, I was ecstatic, what does it mean? It means that they are happy, they are overjoyed, they are in pleasure. So when a person stands outside of themselves, they become ecstatic, and the ecstasy of the divine name hammering on the self, meaning when the divine name finds the mirror of the self, it shines. It's so hard to hold on to the image of the mirror anymore. It's very hard to find the mirror. Ecstasy, selflessness. The one asking the question usually is the mirror. The iron of the mirror is saying, I want to know about me. But the Quran is saying, you should be wanting to know about what could be reflected from you. You should want to know what is related to you, but not the way you thought. You can reflect. You can become the ground. I breathed my spirit to polish you so that you would be able to reflect my image in you. But you are asking me for anti-rust compound, or you're asking me for a better stand, or you're asking me for this, or you've been asking me for that, when everything is already provided, you see. So that's why there's a problem. It's very hard to get around the guards of the knots. It's very difficult.
Well, I think when we go through struggles or like certain tests in our way, he's trying to show us our, he's trying to fix us.
Yeah.
But we don't give into it because we say, no, well, that was just...
Well, it's very difficult, but when he meets Moses, when Pharaoh, that part of me, which is the ego, let's say, is Pharaoh, and Moses comes, and in this story in all of the divine books, Moses says, Rabbana alladhi ata kullu shay'in halakahu thumma hadda. So the Sheikh Arabi and other teachers, they say, it's a very interesting statement. our Lord, the one who gave to each thing its nature, its created nature, and then guided it accordingly, they add. Meaning they add the adverb, accordingly, according to their nature. So that means that you would have a different test than I would have. We all would have different tests. And yes, we should try to understand suffering in this way. We should try to understand conflict in this way, because it is this way. At the same time, Ustad, our teacher, he has a wonderful. You see, different Sufis have a different orientation. And our teacher, he had the school of pleasure, of spiritual pleasure. He in his poetry everywhere, if you talk to him, he would talk about lezat. So the pleasure of feeling the divine name manifesting in you. Well, that's very much like radiyatan madiyatan, you see. So it's very pleased, very, very happy, and knows that God is pleased, because God keeps making the soul more pleased. And all that means is God is looking at his own face in the soul. So it is more pleased, and of course he is more pleased. Let's say the mirror, let's say God only sees a corner of his mouth, metaphorically speaking. He's happy, but he'd be more happy if there was more jamiat, there was more comprehensiveness. So if one begins, the mirror starts to become more broadly reflective. And the comprehensiveness, full comprehensiveness would be that the whole face is seen in the mirror. You see what I mean? So when we start out, we would have like a glimpse. And Rumi calls this glimpse a sheep. Sheep. He says there's a sheep that will jump over the stream first. And he says, when that sheep jumps, the other ones, they will follow it, because that's the way sheep are. So he's giving examples of how the mind is actually in a relationship with each other. And he says, if even one part of you becomes aware of this, pretty soon more of you will go in that direction. So there's a lot of, it's a little bit complicated, but I'm trying to make it easy by saying that if I forget about what I want and I just decide to be empty, so I make a practice. Who does that? Everybody does that. It's called the via negativa. All the mystics all over the world, you just study their practices. Every one of them, every single one, they try to get out of the way. They don't try to figure things out. If they're magicians, they try to use it immediately. The ego tries to use it. But if they're not magicians, they try to not use it. They try just to be passive, we could say, receptive. In that domain, not when you go to the commute traffic, because that would be pretty dangerous to be not with it. You see, you have to be really. So we're talking about a domain where you're exploring this. But it'd be like if you found a spring in your basement. Like, it was very troublesome before then, because you had to go to a well down the road. And then somebody told you, did you know that if you dig in your own basement, there's water will come up from your own basement? Because the water you see from this well is traveling under this ground. So, well, that's preposterous. Everybody knows that this water only comes from that well. No, I'm telling you that it's underneath this land. And if you just dig in your basement, you will have your own well and you won't have to go out anymore. So Rumi uses this analogy. He says you should dig in the basement in the dark, and you should go down until you find the well. So that's very different from if you're going to now work on the house or do something else. It's a different process, but you are permanently enriched. Permanently, the water is coming to you directly from your basement. See?
How exactly do you do that?
I'm sorry?
How exactly would you do that?
It's very easy, because digging a well means to simply remove the things that had been accumulating in there, which in Qur'an is described. The well is the heart. See, so so Irana he says, "Rana qulubihim mimma yaksibun." So there's a rust upon the hearts from what they have been gathering. You see, so it means that there's an accumulation, and this accumulation is the emotions, the ideas, the opinions, the sadnesses, the etc. And so actually all they're saying is that is a process of emptying. So that's why we say La, the power of La, the immense power of La, the huge, the biggest power of the world is La. You see, is no. So if we say, if we just do it in the positive sense, so you have nafi and asbat. So if you go asbat, you're saying Allah, Allah, Allah. But if you start with the nafi, you say La ilaha illa, illa Allah, illahu, or whatever. Then you are focusing on La, and you are letting go, and you say, maybe you recognize, say, oh, this is a familiar thought. Rumi says, treat us like a guest. Don't become upset. It will take time. Another image you could say is that it's the zikr. See, the zikr is very important, much more important than people realize, because zikr is like you're learning to be a diver. And all of your life you were seasick on a boat that is moving around on the surface, and someone says, I'm going to teach you to not be seasick. And they said, that's impossible. I've tried everything. It doesn't work. Says, well, it's going to work, because we're going to go below where the waves are moving. So we're going to learn to dive down underneath the waves, and when you get down there, you will not be seasick. Say, well, I will drown. Say, no, you will not drown, because you actually, a part of you is aquatic, meaning spiritual. Part of you is not affected by this. And so the image there is to go to unity. So it also means returning to unity. There's busyness, multiplicity, and there's unity. So a quiet moment. There's another way it could happen, which is through astonishment. That's why the Sufis advocate the love of beauty and the cultivation of love, because even the love of a child, the love of your spouse, the love of human beings, they might, anything that decreases the ego. Because notice all of our preoccupations, they're somehow about us. As you know, people say, well, I want to tell you my dreams. I say, I would rather hear about your daydreams. I would rather know your daydreams, because if you look at your own daydreams, you will know a lot about your nafs. And you will see they are very self-referential. They're about the ego. Just watch for a few minutes. Daydreams. You're driving, you have a daydream. It's like, who's the winner of this daydream? Who's the hero of this daydream? Who is the beneficiary of this daydream? Is it somebody other than the nafs? I don't think so. It's usually the nafs is the beneficiary of the daydream. Dreams are very interesting, but daydreams are very useful, because we realize the repetition. All that is bricks. See, God sends a test, and he tears down some of the wall of the idol house. And then the human being, through daydreams, builds back up the idol house. Then God sends another. Even God makes a person go to sleep, and then the soul goes back to God, and and then in the day the soul returns, and immediately the soul wakes up, and it creates daydreams, and it quickly builds up the walls of the perimeter wall so nobody can come in.
So are you supposed to forget about your daydreams?
What I mean is we use the daydream. See, at no time, when we dive below the waves, it is not our intention to destroy the waves. Our intention is to have the option. Our intention is to have the option of either being with the waves or being below the waves. So when we want to know about the energies of the ocean, we may prefer going up onto the waves where we're seeing the divine names manifesting. Or maybe we wish to go to the source of the waves and we go below the waves, and we wish to have the peace and the quiet of being directly in the source of things, where we realize a great deal about ourselves, because we realize which relationship we have to which divine names. So the Sufi way is not about the impossibility of things. It's about what is possible. So it is possible. Earlier today we had a question where somebody says, well, how will I have all of these worries, I have thoughts and so forth. I say, that's interesting, because so do I. But it doesn't matter that I have those, because I have the waves and I have the ocean. The deep ocean, it never changes, you see. So we want to see the heart wake up. And this means to become one with the ocean. And at that point, do we have bad days? Yes, we still get into storms and so forth, but we can escape. We have a refuge. That's why I quoted to him the poem, Dil dar hamahal tekyagah hast mara, dar mulki wujud padshah hast mara, az fatnai aql chun bajan mi ayam, mamnun dilam khuda gawah hast mara. This is we now have so many Khalili books, everybody can take one, huh? Those of you who don't have, there's a poem from, do you guys, everybody have it? So it's here. We have thousands of them, I think. I don't know how many we have. We've discovered them accidentally while visiting my basement. Huh? We found them. I didn't know, for years I didn't know, said, we were out of them. 10 years ago I said, we're completely out. Turns out there's these hundreds of them in my own basement I didn't know about. So now that we give them free to our dervishes, I think so, am I right? Yeah. So in this book of the poems of Khalili, there's this one poem, and what is he saying? He's saying that the heart in every state is my refuge. In the kingdom, in the realm of existence, it is my king. When I tire of the mischief of the mind, God knows I'm grateful to my heart. So it makes a refuge, you see. So the other thing is another advantage. It answers the question. See, if you learn to be a diver, this answers the question about death. Is it true when the wave dies that it is gone? Yes, the shape of the wave is gone, but it was always just the water. And now one has identified with the water. So now one has a certain understanding about what is ephemeral and passing away and what is remaining. So the Vajrabhakti, the aspect that remains, is the water of the wave. The ego is the part that's facing Hawa, facing the air. Hawa, of course, also meaning desire, the winds of desire blowing across the surface and creating the wave. But the advantage of becoming a diver is one understands the undercurrent. One understands it. So there's nothing more valuable than this. So anyway, a few words you can see on this topic about this, inshallah, will be useful to you. And is that good? I hope that answers some of the other questions. And what I will do, because of time, is I'll read you the brief citation. We will have more time per question, but I will add what Ibn Arabi says from Khwarazmi. It's very brief. Both of these are pretty brief statements, but they're useful statements to think about. So here, so just go back and quote on the citation is, Rana ala qulubihim bima kanu yaksibun. The reason I like this one is that God is using the verb gasp to accumulate, to aggregate, and therefore it's a clear understanding of, it's not just sin, it's anything that is a lot of the sustaining of the nafs is a different kind of pleasure, like an egotistical pleasure. Like the thought that I did the best in my class, I was the nicest person, I had the most positive comments on Facebook, whatever it might be, whatever the person is sustaining. It's more of it is the dangerous positive material than negative material. So that's why I like that particular verse, which is towards the end of the Qur'an. Huh? You have heard it before, yeah? And this passage here is, let's see, here we go. So this one, he says, فهو الجامع فهو الجامع للواقع وغير الواقع. In Persian, Khwarizmi adds که این کتاب جامع باشد واقع و غیر واقع را، یعنی آنچه واقع شده است و آنچه تا ابد واقع خواهد شد. That part, I haven't translated this, so just in the moment here he's saying that this is, so this book, meaning this Qur'an, which is the world, is comprehensive, Jama'at, which of course is abjad of Qur'an, of the what is actual and what is not yet actualized. In other words, that which has already occurred and manifested, and that which till forever will be coming into manifestation. وَلَا يَعْرِفُوا مَا قُلْنَاهُ إِلَّا مَنْ كَانَ قُرْآنًا فِي نَفْسِهِ. And nobody can understand this. Nobody can grasp this. Nobody can have a spiritual understanding of this, of what I am saying, except the person who has become a Qur'an in themselves. So that's Sheikh Ibn Arabi talking. In the Persian he says, وَسِرِ إِن سُخَن سِرِ إِن سُخَن را در نمیابد مگر آن که به نفس خود قرآن باشد، یعنی کتابی باشد جامعه همه حقایق را در نفس خود. پس چون جمعیت خود را بشناسد، بداند که او نسخه عالم کبیر است و جامع کلمات الله که عبارت است از حقایق عالم مفصل. و صدق این مقال را که اهل کمال در مخاطبه او گفته‌اند. So the again, like he says, the secret of this words, nobody can grasp this except the person who becomes, so he's translated this, becomes a Qur'an inside of themselves. In other words, it becomes a book that is comprehensive of all of the realities that they see inside of themselves. So now this is very parallel, these two citations. One of them is when he says, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَةٌ لِلْمُقِينِينَ وَفِي أَنفُسَكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. So these Quranic verses, they're always directing a person to see the ayat outside and inside. But the truth is, the one inside is immensely powerful beyond belief compared to the one outside. So the one inside is actually more important because it is in fact the summary, the image of the whole thing in this very subtle thing. So it's very much like an atomic bomb when it's like a small thing, but when it explodes, it's massively, massively powerful. You see, so So he says, so when the totality, person knows the totality of themselves, they know that they are a copy, a model of all of the greater world, Alam Kabir. And they know that they are comprehensive of all of the aggregate of God's words, which means the realities, realities as they are in detail, they are deployed fully. See, so there's tafsil and ijmal, and so he's saying that in detail and full deployment, you would see the divine names manifesting in the world outside, but in a more general way, in a comprehensive way, there are the energies, the meanings of this in the human being. That's why the Sheikh also says you cannot know the whole universe the way God knows it, because he knows it for every single creature, the smallest ant, everywhere, every ant. We cannot know this. Sufi doesn't have the time. God has eternity to know these things, you see. So Sufi is knowing in the most universal, comprehensive way inside herself or himself. They are feeling these capacities, you see. So this is the meaning of this words about becoming Qur'an. So we're back again to the same. This is all I was going to read to you from these two sources, but we're back to the same discussion of, is this possible? What does this like? And people have described their own experience, and you can read different Sufis describing what it was like for them to experience, to feel this, to see how this happened to them. What I've tried to do is make it that it's not in as a remote story. What I want is that it's a something that anybody could experience. Is it true that anybody could experience it? Well, it's true that God says that He is with you wherever you are, and He doesn't single out people that He says this to. He says it in a general way. It is true that He does single out how people can know things. I quoted earlier today, he says, وَمَا كَانَ لِبَشَرٍ أَنْ يُكَلِّمَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا وَحْيًا أَوْ مِنْ وَرَاءِ حِجَابٍ أَوْ يُرْسِلَ رَسُولًا فَيُوحِيَ بِإِذْنِهِ مَا يَشَاءُ. So this is a famous verse that the Sufis say applies to any bashar. So he says, because the verse in the Quran says, وَمَا كَانَ لِبَشَرٍ أَنْ يُكَلِّمَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا وَحْيًا. So it's not about necessarily only the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or somebody else, about any bashar, any mortal, any human being like you and me. So it says, it is not possible, it's not given that a bashar, a human being, can be spoken to by God directly, except through wahi. Well, this is already dangerous territory, I think you'll agree. Sufis say, well, God's willing to give wahi to the bees. Surely a human being can also have wahi, because God says in the Quran He gives wahi to, like a kind of inspiration. So He gives inspiration to the bees. The bees know where to go, how to come back. It's a kind of inspiration that He gives to the bees. They make honey, you see. Everything in the world is considered a symbolism. Now the modern scientists, they may say, well, we found out that they have some little nugget of iron in their head and they're using the polar regions, whatever it is. It doesn't negate anything about Sufism. It just, we should rejoice in what science also tells us. But the main thing for us is we say, okay, now there's verses distinguishing. It is not given that a mortal should be communicated with by God except through inspiration or from behind the veil, أو من وراء حجابا, or through the revelation of a prophet who has permission to bring the revelation. Most people are going to come the last one. They're going to come from the last one because they don't have the capacity. So on the one hand, it's accessible to everyone. On the other hand, maybe the thing to think about this life is in this maktab, in this school, we get a short time here. So there are certain key lessons we should learn here, and maybe we will learn everything that we need completely. And maybe we merely need to know those things which, as we step into disembodiment, what do we retain according to the Sufis and to the Muslims? We actually retain selfhood. We don't just retain spirit, we retain selfhood, because there's no reason to have problems in what's called the grave for spirit. Spirit's not affected by problems in the grave. It's only nafs that's affected by problems. Like, as you know, the grave is an imaginal world. Abdul John's asking, the grave is again extension. Ibn Arabi in Ilyas, he says that the imagination survives. He says the imagination is the most powerful faculty in the human formation. More powerful than intellect by far. So we are, in other words, we are creatures of form. We are meaning embodied. And because we are embodied meaning, we will remain embodied. We move from one embodiment to another embodiment. Because we represent the divine names, and we will be embodied in the grave again in a different way. And at the resurrection, we will be fully re-embodied. The Islamic message is not that everything vanishes into zero. No, quite the contrary, that there's a world of great stability, of perpetual stability, where each individual is manifesting the divine name suitable to them, and where even the hands have eyes, everything has vision. You see, they're sharing the great perceptions. So it's a very interesting transformation. In other words, in each level, meaning is becoming stronger and form is becoming less blinding. So in this realm, form is the most blinding. And then when Muhammad ﷺ is talking to the dead people, the others say, "Can they hear you?" He says, They can hear me perfectly well. Yes, indeed, they can. So they go, "Oh, we weren't thinking they could hear you, because for many centuries we were thinking that there's just this moment, then you die, and then you're gone. This is what we were thinking, and now you are talking to these dead people." Or the person who is actually dying, they said this person's vision is becoming sharp. That's strange. They're dying. Maybe they're even blind. How can their vision? Because there's less. The embodiment is not so thick. So we all know what that's like. If we were wearing different kinds of plastic or cloth over our eyes, the thinnest one we would see the light coming in, and the darkest one we wouldn't even see any light coming in. Right? So it's like that. So this is the thickest one here, and then on the other hand, the Sufis say here, understand that you are in an embodiment. And earlier today I was talking about the prayer, and I was advising Shukriya John, who's become completely bored with my talk, and we see her just sleeping there. I was telling her how the prayer, we want to practice it exactly because we understand that if we practiced it really well, that it is like we are on a film screen, and the projector's running, and we are doing, and if we do it exactly right, we may suddenly become free, and we may be able to look at the projector and who is projecting it, see. So to understand that, see, embodiment is usually a burden. So when you say the prayer, try to think, oh, this is such an interesting thing. I am now given a kind of embodiment that takes me from this embodiment to another embodiment. It's a way to go to another, less dark embodiment. It has a connection to other embodiments. So that's why the prayer is powerful and is important. And it's during the prayer then our job is we're trying to follow exactly what was revealed. And we don't judge, we don't say, oh yeah, we know ours is better than the other, but don't waste your time. The important thing is you have your script, you have your lines, you read it, you say, okay, I'm supposed to do this, and you do it exactly this way. We don't add anything at this point. In the dua, we can add our personal desires, what we want, but in the prayer, we do exactly, because the more closely we do it, the more we embrace the embodiment of the prayer, the more the divine is feeling the sincerity of our knowledge that we are meaning embodied in form. You see? So that's why any embodiment, any sacred dance, any sacred movement is about this, what I'm talking about now. And in nature, all of it is sacred, but it does not have the reflectiveness of the human soul. So it's the human soul specifically that can do this. So the thing is all about embodiment, and every day is another embodiment, and every day therefore can be a drag. So people they feel bad because they're trapped in the body of the culture, the moment. Like, why should I be trapped at a time when Donald Trump is running for president? You see? Why couldn't I be in some other, you see? So we're trapped in whatever we think but it's whatever it is. This is what we're given. So we say, no, this is your embodiment. This is what you get. So you deal with it. Try to see the divine names, try to see what's going on, try to see the always try for the mercy, always try for accepting that embodiment is temporary. Remember, whenever we hear even that lots of people have perished, any of us were going to perish anyway. We should not suddenly imagine they weren't going to perish. Of course they were going to perish. They were just going to perish, and they were going to become disembodied at another time. But according to Islam and to Sufism, only one part of them perished. That's why the Sufis try to make this very clear. And Ibn Arabi in Ilyas and other chapters says, when an unjust person imprisons someone and tortures them or kills them, they should not think they have killed them. They have not killed them. First of all, God has been the actor. And secondly, they did not die. They retained another body, which is the imaginal body. So, do we get to experience the imaginal body? Yes. Miraj is a prophetic example. What do we learn from that? We learn that spirit is not something that was created. Therefore, it cannot be destroyed. And we learn that everything else will be destroyed. Even nafs will be overwhelmed, and will become transparent in the Qiyamah. That's why spirit is seeing through even the hands, only because at that point nafs is literally like clear plastic, you could say, or totally clear. The body is totally luminous. So there is still some element of selfhood, because the divine names are manifesting, but this notion of self or ego identity is simply become completely transparent. So this is the notion. So this is a doctrine. Can we experience the doctrine? The answer is yes, we can experience some measure of that doctrine, some portion of that doctrine. Go and look at the astrolabe and go and understand the spider. Because if you look at the astrolabe, it has a design in a web and the spider, and he says that in other words, the main thing he's trying to say is, if we think about the meaning in the old world of the astrolabe, the Europeans, they tried so hard and they succeeded. They wanted one. It became the Holy Grail. If you read the literature of Europe, they're trying to get from the Muslim scientists the astrolabe. It's regarded as almost like a magical device. But Rumi and all of the Muslims, they understood that it was a scientific device. And that's because they understood Sufism as a science, not just as a school of love. They understood that it was a science. And the thing about the astrolabe, the spider, is the idea of comprehensiveness again. The idea that anything in the world could be known in the astrolabe. So that's why we see this word come up in the Masnavi dozens of times. And we see it, I've translated, if you look even on things that I've given, lectures I've given in England, there's some material where I've lectured on the astrolabe and quoted from this. I can show you some of the trends, because I was very interested in this. And Rumi says that most people, they are in a well. In the same conversation of the astrolabe, he's talking about the self, and the instrument has become broken or impaired. And he says the astrolabe is able to see all of the stars and the planets, but person is living in a well. And because they're living in a well, they only can see a little bit of the sky. So the first thing a person has to do is, like Joseph, has to be pulled out of the well. So they're in the well, now they have to be pulled out of the well, because then they will see the whole sky, and they will be like the astrolabe. And the whole sky represents all of the divine names. And Rumi says, down in the well, very often there's stars, like we say in English, an unlucky star. In the Persian, they say the same thing. So the idea of the stars not being taken literally by Sufis, certainly by other people, taken literally as good luck or bad luck, but for the Sufis, they represent capacities of constriction or expansion, like Faisal John and I were talking earlier about in the divine names. All of it is the work of God, but there's the issue of range. So let's talk about Jami'at as the issue of range. Like now, let's come back to life is difficult. And again, this is whether the question we were talking about or where Bari Alai Hamidi was asking about these kind of preoccupations and thoughts. So the thing is that, imagine I have a lot of problems, because we each have a lot of problems, so that I have problems, and I only know my problems. Maybe I'm thinking I should destroy my problems, or I should get away from the person who is causing my problems. But the Sufis say, actually, if you expand your range in relationship to this new range that you have, the range where your problems were is a smaller piece of it. And this is what comprehensiveness means. We still have problems, but the range what if the range increases by 2? It's still a big deal, right? But what if the range increases by 100? That would mean that 1% is really difficult for me, and 99% is variations of other kinds of tests, spiritual. I was mentioning one kind of spiritual test that was frightening, was the mind is a storyteller. And I mean, like we would say the id, it's not, the ego even is telling these stories. But the problem is, let's say the story that the normal person is telling is like one line. Suddenly, imagine that line extends into a plane, and the stories are limitless, and you're hearing thousands of stories that have nothing to do with you. Where is this coming from? Well, the problem is you've become the astrolabe, but it's not being sheltered, it's not tuned up yet, and all of the stories are coming. It's very hard to bear, and you think you're going crazy. And some of the stories are so funny, some of them very sad, and you're just lying there like a total passive recipient. You're just listening to the mind now telling hundreds and hundreds of different stories. This is a strange thing, but it's an actuality. So then we realize there's the transpersonal nature of human existence, and that there are many stories in the world around us, and we are telling some, and other individuals are, without limit, they are telling stories, and the mind is a storyteller. What are stories? They are embodiments. Therefore, this is a story, and what's coming out of my mouth is a story, and the Qur'an is a story, and there are characters. Who are these characters? They're the divine names. They are in these relationships. So the astrolabe, to answer your question, is the Sufis trying to point out that the heart, when they say heart, they mean an instrument. They mean something that is capable of seeing the whole universe, or if it's broken and if it's not working, it could be used as a doorstop. That's what they mean. They mean that it's something that you would never believe. If it was a doorstop and you said, who has this? Says, our grandfather had this, and it stopped working, and we decided it was very good to hold the door open. But what did grandfather use this for? We don't really know. It's a strange instrument. We don't know what it is for. See, that's what has happened. So then the Sufis say, well, no, it's a valuable instrument. If we polish it, if we tune it up, and we get it working, you will be so surprised, because you were looking in the well, you were seeing a couple of stars, and what happens if you saw the whole sky?